Yeah, I was born in Washington, D.C. I was raised in a mostly nominally Catholic home. I heard different ideas about the Christian God, ideas of love and forgiveness. Those were themes that were important, but all in all, seemed to have little to no relevance in my life whatsoever. To me, Jesus was essentially a religious relic, someone from the distant past who was maybe portrayed on paintings or came up during holiday seasons, but at the end of the day meant nothing for how I actually lived my life or what I thought about the world. Yeah, so having not really saw relevance for God in my life at all from a pretty early age, I sought pleasure through really any means that I could find it in. And I was very rebellious in pretty much every phase of life, whether it was school, at home with my parents, just a general member of the community through vandalism and things like that. I was just your kind of typical picture of someone who was very rebellious and sought the praise of other people through how rebellious I was, or how much I didn't care about the rules, or how much harder I could party than anybody else. That was sort of where I found my identity and what I wanted people to know about me. By the time I was 16, like this rebellion and sort of this pursuit of pleasure manifested itself in some pretty heavy drug use. To describe a day in my life when I was 16, I basically got out of bed, smoked a little pot before school to get high there, went to school for a little bit, maybe didn't go at all, spend the day at school trying to conceive of a way to come up with enough money to buy a half gram of cocaine. That was about $40 for me, so if I could just come up with $40 every day, I'd be good, because I was completely hooked to this substance, and every kind of waking moment of my life was dedicated to finding more of it. I would sometimes help myself to the register at work to come up with money from that. I would steal from family, friends, pawn things off. I was a complete and utter addict, and my life was beginning to fall apart. Teen Challenge is a home for men and women, as they say, with life-controlling issues, usually manifesting itself through drugs. And so they brought me down there. I was so angry at them for that decision. I just wanted to live my life and party and do what I wanted to do. But fairly quickly into being at the program, I was brought to a very humble, a very low, I would say even a very destitute place. And just the lifestyle that I was living sort of began to catch up with me, and I began to see it for what it truly was. The core issue in my life really wasn't rebellion. It wasn't even so much a substance issue. The core issue deep down inside was that I had rejected my Maker, and that I was living a life that was contrary to how He designed me to be. And as a result of that, my life started falling apart at the seams. And I saw my main issue as being sin, and that my main problem was actually directed towards God and not all of these substances. But it was at that time where I saw my sin for what it was, that the cross of Jesus, sort of just this sculpture that was on the front of the Catholic Church that I used to see growing up, the cross of Jesus and the fact that He came to die in a wicked person's place like myself, so that I could be forgiven and set free, utterly blew my mind when that became real to me. I embraced this reality of God's love for my life. I embraced that He could offer me forgiveness. And as I embraced the gospel of Jesus' life, death, and resurrection, my life became transformed. For someone who could barely read a book past Where's Waldo, growing up in high school with just very poor grades and everything like that, I became someone who loved to read the Bible, someone who loved to talk about God, to think about God, even to worship God. I came to realize that for many people who use substances, it's either done as an escape from problems or a way to sort of shake up the mundaneness of life. Simply saying, this life isn't enough just as it is. I need some sort of substance to take me above and beyond that to make this life have meaning. And what that got replaced with was the worship of God. When I began to worship God, He became the thing for me that made sense of life and ultimately brought me out of sort of my normal existence. I realized that I was made for more, and the person that I was made for was the God who had made me. The Manassas area was the place that Jesus found me at my absolute worst. I was a student at Osborne High School, and I was just in a very terrible place. And now, some 14 years later, I recognize that many people are in the same spot that I was in, far from God, addicted to drugs, different things like that. My deepest desire is that people like that would come to see Jesus for who He actually is, and the relevance and the significance and the transformation that He could bring into their life. But not just people who are kind of outwardly falling apart like I was. There are people with high-paying jobs, government contractors riding the VRE in every day who are far from God and have other areas of brokenness either in their home or in their personal life. I long for them to see that Jesus is the only one who can satisfy the longings of their soul and that He came to give Himself to them as a sacrifice. The issues of racial divide and the great diversity that represents this city gathered together and unified in the way that only the gospel can, by coming together as family members in a local church. I desire ultimately for all people in this city, regardless of if they were a absolute train wreck visibly like I was, or if they seem to have it well together, but there's issues going on behind the scenes in their life. My desire is for all the people of this city to see Jesus for who He is, to experience the news of His saving life, death, and resurrection, and to have their lives transformed as a result, like mine was.